The downing of the Malaysian airliner has members of Congress here in the U.S. reconsidering policies towards Russia, including potential new, more severe sanctions. I want to bring in Congressman Adam Schiff. He's Democrat from California. Joining us from California, he's also a senior member of the House Intelligence Committee, and he traveled to Ukraine earlier this year to see the situation on the ground firsthand. Congressman, just an amazing series of events that have happened in Ukraine leading up to this crash now. I just want to ask you, can U.S.-Russia relations survive this?
Well, they're going to survive, but they're, I think, going to get worse before they get better. And it's hard to see with Putin in office, and he's going to be there for quite a while, things ever getting back to where they might have been under Medvedev. That's a shame, but we have to recognize we have in Russia the leader we have, and that's just going to be a fact of life. But I do think that this latest catastrophe really ought to get Europe to join us in a much stiffer round of sanctions. This really ought to steel their will to do so, and if this doesn't, I don't know what will. Yeah. And one thing I'm concerned about, Jim, is this investigation, as important as it is for bringing to justice those who pulled the trigger and issues like compensation, we can't allow the length of this investigation to delay us from taking action. And I can see Moscow using this as a pretext to say, not so fast, don't do anything, let's wait to see where the facts are. We know enough about the facts already.
Right. It's very tempting to drag this out. You can already see, as you say, the steps being taken. How do you rate, I want to ask you how you rate the president's strategy so far, because the president's strategy has been, as we were saying in a previous segment, strong words and gradually raising the cost for Russia until it changes its behavior. That hasn't worked, clearly. In fact, there's been escalation, not de-escalation, including sending more heavier weapons to the rebels, including the weapons that took down this plane. Has the president's policy failed in Ukraine?
No, I don't think so. If you measure it by, are the Russians out of Crimea, has the conflict ended, then any policy would be a failure. But if you measure by the fact that the Russians didn't invade other parts of Ukraine, that the Russian economy is suffering under the sanctions, and that Russia has resorted, instead of this overt military action, to a lesser engagement, then it has been at least partially successful.
Well, but I do Congressman Schiff, to be fair, yeah, that's a pretty low bar for success. I mean, no invasion of eastern Ukraine, but you have pro-Russian rebels controlling areas in Ukraine, including the area where this plane went down, and 298 people died on that plane.
Well, over the last 6 weeks, controlling fewer and fewer areas as the Ukrainian military finds its feet and has pushed the rebels out of many areas. But look, Jim, I'm not saying that this can be declared a complete success, but we have to remember the limitations we're operating under. No one is willing to go to war over this. Nobody wants American boots on the ground. So that presents real limited options. We could push the Russians out if we're willing to go to war over it. But if we're not, then we have to ask, are we getting any results for the policies that are, within reason, within contemplation? And I think the answer is yes. But I also think that the sanctions are going to have to be stiffened and strengthened. And at the end of the day, the only thing that Putin respects is strength. And I give the president credit. He was out there upping the ante, raising the sanctions before this plane went down. He didn't wait for this latest catastrophe. But we have not had the same success in pushing the Europeans to join us. And I hope that this tragedy will catalyze them into action, because I think at the end of the day, the only way to get real success along the lines you're talking about, which is an end to the Russian provocation and support of these rebels, is with really stiff economic penalties.
Congressman Schiff made a great point, Congressman, just before the break, that short of U.S. boots on the ground, which no one is talking about, that U.S. leverage against Russia is limited. But what can the U.S. do now, short of that, that's going to change Russia's behavior? If you were writing the policy memo for the president, what would you tell him, recommend to him to do?
Well, I think the most effective thing is trying to corral our European allies to step up the economic pressure. The only other option that we haven't employed yet is escalating our support for Ukraine militarily. We're providing them a lot of economic support. We're providing them intelligence support, and some are calling for military support. There is a risk, though, that if we go too far in that direction, we escalate the crisis rather than try to contain it. But I think we can explore other ways that we can help Ukraine militarily without getting into sophisticated weapon systems, things that would help them logistically, things that would help them deal with some of the problems created by the separatists. So that's another option. But frankly, Had we done what people were advocating early on, providing major weapons to Ukraine, I think the situation would be worse, not better. There's no way I think that that would have resulted in Putin backing off. If anything, it probably would have provoked him further. So the most powerful tool we have remains the economy, and we really have the potential, if Europe is willing to work with us, to bring Russia's economy to its knees.
Well, the world will certainly be watching as the U.S. and Europe react to this. Congressman Adam Schiff, thanks very much. I'm Jim Sciutto.